Welcome to the Unsupervised Podcast, the podcast for entrepreneurs, business owners, and leaders. In today's episode, we talk about the myth of the grind, how to work smarter without glorifying burnout. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to tune in with the Unsupervised Podcast, brought to you by Apogee Graphics. We got Tony and me back in the studio. Been a little while since we've recorded. I finally got the whole thing put back together and recording a Man Shed episode last weekend and just finally starting to get, I might even do a Peak One Sports podcast here pretty soon. Now that, I got in here, got it all cleaned up. I did some rearranging with furniture. I don't know if you're a normal listener, you see behind Tony, we got a smaller, what do you want to call it? Entertainment center with a lot less storage. So I had just crap laying everywhere trying to figure it out.
Well, it's a good time of year to do that, to start fresh with a fresh year. Fresh everything, right?
That
Freshen
was part
up the
of
studio a bit. We're actually just talking about a few other improvements we want to make. So
stay tuned. There's
a
going to
lot
be
of stuff.
There's going to be stuff that you can see on camera. That's going to be changing. And speaking of on camera, if you notice this back here, we do have a published author in the studio now. Beyond the Business by Tony Nix. Got a book right here. It's not on camera anymore.
That's been a long time coming. You and I've been talking about it. I was in the works for several years. A lot of that coming through from COVID, And when we kind of started podcasting and really got me motivated to do something else more than just podcasting and be able to get my message out. And as I was working on myself, being able to also, help some of the listeners we had and the guests we had in studio, they would message me and talk about how motivating it was to just hear somebody else like-minded. And, a lot of yours and my conversations just kind of stemmed and made me feel like I needed to write that, get those thoughts out.
Yeah, it was almost like a timeline for me reading it, because I would read stuff like, oh, that's old school OG Business and Beyond podcast.
Yeah.
And then as you read through it, I could hear some of the conversations we had throughout the year. So it was a little different for me reading it than obviously an experience for somebody else.
Which is also why it took time, as I was continuing to grow. Through that time coming out of COVID, obviously that was kind of a struggle for everyone, and everyone changed, and I was kind of building a business through that time as well. That, was very small, that I was trying to escalate and grow. And it just felt like a good time. But anyone that's written a book knows, I don't want to take light from anybody that's written a book that, I'm no big author,
bold.
but man, it takes a lot of time.
Especially your first one too. And
yeah.
I
scrapped many chapters. I've rewritten many chapters.
I understand the feeling, because I don't typically talk to a lot of people about having podcasts. It's like somebody will mention it, like, okay, we can talk about it. It's not something, because you obviously
sell it.
You obviously get those questions. Well, how big is your podcast? This and that, and you almost like, if you give them an answer, it's like people have different.
And then you doubt yourself too. You start thinking about, is it good enough for these people? What do they think of it?
I almost don't want to share it with them or whatever. It's kind of weird to share.
It's very much what the book was about. Like, writing that is redefining success.
Yeah.
It's a very simple read. I mean, somebody could sit and read it in, maybe an hour or two. It's not a very long book. But it's a book. It, has workbook stuff in it, so that there's questions to answer, things for you to dive deeper in. But it's also a book that I feel like is more like a manual than a a long novel.
Yeah.
It's something that, you refer back to and read over and over again.
And I think it could be a timeless book too. It's not a lot that, I read some books that, it's not the original version. It's the upgraded version. They'll preface it and saying, okay, here's the book. And then there's been changes because of the internet, because this book was written before the internet or social media or that. I think a lot of it, I think you could put two and two together reading it. It's hard to say, because you don't know what technology is going to look like, or social media or anything. In 20 years, AI might be, doing everything. You may not be doing half the stuff in that book because AI is doing it. But I think it's vague enough and timeless enough where you could,
Well,
whether
I wanted to
you're
make sure
an
that it would.
entrepreneur, have your own business, or maybe it's, starting a podcast. Maybe it's starting something completely different. It's just
Yeah.
the, let's say rules, but it translates well.
Yeah, it needed to be something that would work in every scenario.
Mm-hmm.
It would work for anyone, whether you're actually in business, even though it's business geared. Um, I think in general, it's just a how do you define success? I mean, it could be great for athletes, um, young kids getting into careers or going to college, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's just it helps kind of set the base for what do you actually think success is, and
Yes.
how do you actually just achieve it, without giving too much away. um, that's kind of what the base of it is. So if you're someone that needs motivation, that you're just kind of feel like you're in a hole or you're stuck, maybe your business isn't growing at the rate you want it to, or you think that you're ready to grow it,
Mm-hmm.
it's a good read because it's going to kind of ground you a little bit, and just realize, hey, reevaluate your goals, reevaluate what you're really trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Humble you. It could humble you in two other. Maybe you're doing really well, and you're like, oh,
Hmm.
okay, doing a lot better than I thought. Or maybe you're not doing all that well,
And
but you're still looking at it as, okay, that's I've made some steps. Just like
mhm.
you don't want to alienate people, but I've never written a book, so I'm just gonna compare it back to a podcast. If somebody says they started a podcast to me, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I'm not going to
That's
ask
the
how many
hardest step.
listeners. I'm not going to ask. I'm like, what do you talk about? What, how
Yeah.
often do you do it? What do you get out of it? Um, but yeah, doing the first episode
Hmm.
is the hardest, and even doing second, third. Like I think once you get to about five or six, when you realize, okay, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal that I suck at this, because you suck at it if you don't have any sort of previous experience, like we talked about Joe Rogan or something like that. Like if you don't have media or TV experience,
Hmm.
your our first podcast sucked. Probably for,
Yeah.
I think it bottomed out at episode 4 was our worst podcast. And I remember that was one that we
We
prepped
put
and
so much time
so
and
much
effort
time
into
into
it.
it. And then we finished and like, man, this is only like 15 minutes long. We got to research more and record and edit in. And yeah, it was bad. And then I think
Honestly,
it
we
started going up
tried
from
too
there.
hard.
Yeah.
And I think that was a lot of what slowed me down with this book, is that I really tried too hard at the beginning and ended up scrapping much of what I did, and kind of reevaluated where I was at, and
Mm-hmm.
reworded things and reworked it. And
You're trying to make it
writing a
perfect.
book's really tough. Now,
Yeah.
the hardest part is just getting your first few words down.
It-
Once you get going, you kind of roll into it. It was good. Now, I didn't stick with it either. I didn't sit down like a lot of writers will go away to a cabin, or they'll go get an Airbnb somewhere, and they'll just, for a whole week or month, just focus on writing. It wasn't like that for me. I would write a few hours here. I would get some ideas in my head, and I would go kind of jot them down. And it was just very, very rough. And I had to read through what I did, reword it and rework it. And
I'm
you know,
sure your opinions, I mean, taking, kind of writing through different eras of your life, I'm sure you go back and your experiences are different, and
mm.
you decide, okay, I don't really agree with that much, or maybe not in
But I
that
think what
particular
what
way.
it's come out to now is it's one of those books, if you read it now, you're going to have certain takeaways. And if you read it a few years from now, you're going to have other takeaways, and it's going to fit into whatever situation that you're in. And I think no matter what your success level is, whether you're at the bottom just starting, or you're seasoned, in whatever you're doing, I think this will be a good one just to kind of reset and reevaluate where you were at.
I think it has the potential to be somebody's rhinoceros's success.
Yeah.
You gave that to me, and I sat down and read it in like 2 or 3 days, because it
Yeah.
wasn't terribly long, but it was just like motivating.
Yeah.
And so you're like, well, I want to keep going. I want to keep
Mhm.
reading. And at the time I had, we hadn't started podcasting. I mean, you were still, doing Apogee stuff under a different name then, but I mean, I had nothing. It was all about entrepreneurship, business, but it stuck with me. So like, I don't know what I couldn't even tell you what I got out of it.
Yeah.
But I know that was when I started reading a lot more, and I didn't read a ton. I wasn't that interested in reading so much. And since then, I probably read 20 books a year,
Yeah.
just because I'm looking for that next book to just sit there and read through it. And, I guess love reading, but want to improve yourself too. You're like, okay, well, I just read for, half an hour. Well, now I'm going to eat a little bit better. I'm not going to just ruin it. I'm going to go do a podcast. I'm going to go research for my next podcast.
Yeah.
It has a good way of just kind of rounding out a lot of what you do. Call it self-improvement. I wouldn't consider your book necessarily a self-improvement, or if it was, you were picking the section in a library or bookstore, I wouldn't necessarily put it under self-improvement, but I think it can. I think,
Yeah.
honestly, all nonfiction books could be self-improvement, depending on why you're reading them. But it's a great read. Like he said, it didn't take long at all. If you, just somebody who doesn't enjoy reading all that much, or maybe you're a slow reader, it's hard to focus, I think it's a good one, because you could read it over and over and over again, to make sure it sticks, and it wouldn't take too terribly long. We have a link below to get the e-version of it on Amazon. How much does it cost? I know you put it barely at anything.
I don't even know. I can't remember.
$4.99 or something. You're like, I'm not gonna. You told me
less.
I'm not gonna try to make money.
Maybe $3.99. Yeah,
You're just gonna put something. There's no reason not to.
When you're working through Amazon, they obviously give you certain recommendations on where pricing should be. So I kind of just followed their guidelines on that.
Yeah, I promise it'll be. It'll. I know it'll definitely be worth it. But at $3.99, there's no reason not to. And this copy back here, we do have a few of the hard copies, not necessarily for sale, depending on the right situation. But hey, you comment down below, however you're listening, whatever podcast platform. If you're watching on YouTube, just comment down below. Tell us you want the book, and I don't know, we'll put you in a drawing or something. Yeah, we'll see how many people want to.
We'll make it work.
So today we are talking about, I think today more so, you talk about social media, our side hustle society we live in. I think grinding is, living for the grind, or however you want to say it. I think it's a very popular phrase.
It's very glorified.
I was going to say in a positive sense, which sure, it's, hardworking, do what you have to do to make ends meet, building, you're grinding. That's great. Kudos to you if you're grinding, but at the same time too, it's you get lost into it. And, I think as time goes on, we talk more about mental health. Men are allowed to talk and speak about feelings and emotions. And before it was like, just man up. Don't worry. This is what you're supposed to do. I think lots of times you can keep grinding, and that may be a word you use to make yourself feel better a little bit, is, man, this sucks. Working so many hours, maybe have a side hustle. Maybe you're working full time for somebody and then have your thing on the side, and you say, well, I'm grinding. That makes you feel better about yourself or whatever. But I think that's a big myth. I don't think, that sometimes that's what it takes. I'm not saying you shouldn't work, my full-time job, I work 50, 60-hour weeks, and, a lot of it's necessary, but sometimes it's necessary to grind, but I don't think that should be the norm.
Yeah.
I think as when Henry Ford created the 4-day work week, the 5-day work week, 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day. And as technologies advance, we haven't really gotten,
No, it seems like as technologies advance, the requirement is more hours.
Because I can send you an email and or make a call, or we can communicate things so quickly. Now, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it just was impossible. So you would think, hey, we're so much more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, inflation's crazy right now, but things are cheaper, easier to get. Just like technology is getting cheaper and better, almost every year. And you think it would slow down, but no, it's just like corporations and just society in general saying no, quicker, faster.
Yeah.
No, hey, you can check your email at 8:00 at night. We have the technology. You don't have to wait.
Saturdays, Sundays.
Yeah, you don't have to wait till Monday morning to take care of that. And maybe it's not somebody telling you to do that, but that's how I feel. Like my email goes, well, mine's different because I have people working over the weekend, so I have to answer my phone.
There's also a lot of pressure for that. I mean, I'm in the same boat you were. or was in the same boat at one time where I had an employer that was kind of the norm, was just be available all the time.
Yeah.
And, you would have a lot of customers you were working with that, or colleagues that were emailing on Sunday afternoon. And you're like, man, that's, are you going to take a day off at all? And most of these
Yeah.
guys don't. Actually, just a week ago, I had a customer of ours works at a big company that we do work for, and they were sending me order information on a Sunday evening.
Yeah.
Like, man, that's yeah. I mean, I get you want to sometimes make your Mondays easier, but the work's going to come either way. I mean, you're going to be busy, whether you are sending it out late on Sunday or not. I know they were trying to get ahead of it, and for whatever motivation or reason they had, but I was just thinking, man, that I've been there. I've been there where you have to work weekends just to get it done. There's not enough time in a day during the week to get that done. And you're right. You nailed it on the head. I mean, the grind, I think it is a myth too. I think that there are times of grinding, but there's also, there needs to be time for rest, or you end up getting burnt out.
Yeah. Yeah. And talking about burnout, and you can think maybe you're going to answer that email on Sunday afternoon. You're like, yeah, it's just a quick email. It's not a bit, but mentally you're not turning your mind off from work. And then after have you ever done something over the weekend through work, and then you're kind of like, you have that little stress in the back of your head? That's because you're working, but you got to turn it off now. You're like, okay, talk to that person, got that figured out. There are times, even at work, you just feel burnt out because your phone keeps ringing. It may not even be anything important. It may be somebody asking a question, but then you get off the phone, it rings again. It's just terrible time. You get 3 phone calls in a row, and then at the end, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
Nothing really happened. You're just kind of over exaggerating it in your head.
Yeah.
And then you get that tired feeling where you're just exhausted. You're just mentally exhausted. And that's typically what you're dealing with, is burnout. And yeah, Monday through Friday, or I guess it depends what your company or business is, it may not be a Monday through Friday. It may, hey, you work weekends, you do something with entertainment, you do something, it could be different, but, typical signs of burnout, include emotional exhaustion, being drained, detached. You're sitting at home, you're detached from your family. If you're on your email, you can't, we've said it multiple times. Multitasking is bullshit. Now you're doing 2 things at once. It's taking part of now you may be able to do it without killing yourself or stressing yourself out, but you're not listening if you're focused in on something else.
Something's got to give.
Yeah. I look down here to look at a note, and I don't realize it, but I'm probably umming and awing and, trying to find my place here.
Well, you're trying to focus on work. You want to put 100% attention to that, but like you said, you're not putting 100% attention to your family, or,
you
only
have
worked for
100%.
companies that's like, oh, you can do whatever, and I would try to, go to kids' games. Oh, I'll just take my laptop and work. Well, you're so focused on the activity,
and
you're not actually getting work done.
No, you're not. Yeah. I called in sick or I was sick one time. And my phone kept ringing. I had to take care of stuff. I could have delegated it better, but I thought, man, I might as well be in the office. It's so much more difficult to work out of your office. You might as well just be there, just because you're sitting there and your kid looks up. Oh yeah, Dad's sitting there looking at his computer. That's not helping. Decreased motivation, a loss of enjoyment. We're talking about, we were just talking about trying to get into to do more podcasts and record more podcasts. And, a lot of that could be, I'm just tired from work. I'm mentally exhausted. I don't want to, and not necessarily because you're burned out, but it comes with the territory. If you're burned out, you're not going to do anything you like. Whether it's podcasting, whether it's a side hustle.
Well, when you become burned out, I noticed that when you do have those weekends and you try to take those, it's really hard to enjoy those and really disconnect. Like I think you mentioned that it's hard to disconnect from that when things are hectic and crazy and you're grinding and you're like, I'm just going to take today, but you're still in the back of your mind, you're still thinking about the things you have to do. And something I always, I try to preach to my kids and to anybody that I can is, really be where your feet are at.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes I do get distracted when we're doing a podcast and I think about, oh, I got to do this tomorrow. I need to remember that. Oh, I can't forget. Or, um, you know, with my kids and their sports and all the things they have
Yeah.
going on, it's like, it's fine. Think about the sport when you're there.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in class, think about class. You need to, where your feet are at is where, when you're at church, focus on that. You know, don't sit at church and be thinking, oh, this whole week I got all these things to do and I've got that. Like, there's time for that. Make
Mm-hmm.
time for that. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. I know it's really hard. That's something I struggle with that I really
Yeah.
have to work on, which is probably why I try to preach it so much, because it's not that I'm telling you that. I'm telling myself that. I'm trying to reassure myself, hey, be where your feet are at. Be here. If I'm here doing a podcast, that's where I'm at. When I leave here, wherever I go, whatever I'm doing, that's where my feet have to be. When you're with your family, be with your family fully.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to think about work. You know, try not to do that. And it's hard for me, you know, being in a small business that my family's involved, my wife's involved, my kids, like, that is really tough, but I try not to talk about work things until it's appropriate for work time.
Yeah.
You know, I try not to fill my wife in or bring her up to speed on where we're at on things on the weekends
She may
when
not
we're
be mentally there too.
exactly. And, you know, and the same with my son works for us part time. I try not to talk to him on the weekends and when he's trying to enjoy and be away and at, you know, he's not in school and
It's different for you. It's your company.
yeah.
You're excited about
For me,
it.
yeah, exactly. I could sit here and talk about business all day long. You know, we
Yeah.
could do that. And sometimes you and I do,
Mm-hmm.
but we make time for those things. And when we're here, you know, doing a podcast, having a talk, I have to make sure that I'm grounded. My feet are here, and this is what I'm talking about. And my head isn't trying to spin up other things.
Yeah, and being burned out, it's just a slippery slope because, you know, whatever it is you do after work, like I said, maybe you're running a podcast, maybe you have hobbies, you have other things to do, especially productive things, and you just don't feel like doing them. You just want to sit down, watch TV, play video games, which is fine. That's really like a lot of times how I
They're good outlets. I mean, they really are.
mentally reset is just go and just do something mindless. But typically, yeah, it's a slippery slope. You're gonna, eat worse, not exercise. You're
Mhm.
just gonna, and then it makes it hard to get back on the horse, and it demotivates you to start over. Basically, it's if you hate starting new, never quit.
Yeah.
And that's what something you want to avoid getting burned out is because you're going to be demotivated and you're just going to quit.
Well, you see this a lot with people when they take vacations. You know, they never really disconnect. Um, Obviously, I'm preaching to the choir. You know,
Yeah.
I do the same thing. But last fall, I was able to take a vacation, which I didn't have much choice, which was probably good.
Mm-hmm.
But I was out of the country, and it was really hard to have communication. So I made sure everyone was lined out and brought up to speed on everything. And that was probably one of the best vacations, best recharges I've had
Yeah.
because I set my team up to succeed while I was gone. You know, and I try to do that the same when they're scheduling vacations. I try to tell them, hey, you're off, you're off. I'm going to try not to call you unless it's just an emergency and I need the information. I may reach out, but I'm really not going to get your mind there. I want your mind on wherever you're at. You know?
Yeah. And I know a lot of people would tell you, I can't do that. I would stress out the whole time because they're going to, think the worst. They can't get a hold of me. So that's why I would say intentionally do that. Like
Mhm.
do a test, like make it where like, hey, unless it's just shit hits the fan, you're the only one that can save us. Ignore it. Just
Yeah.
come up with it. Say, hey, this guy's not gonna call me unless it's the absolute big, worst emergency, and just ignore it. That way, that's where you learn where your weaknesses are.
Yeah.
And then you come back and you're like, okay, this is where we struggled. We didn't know where this was. Wasn't a huge deal, but we couldn't, so now, okay, now you know where to fix it. Just decide, you don't have to go out of the country, but just say, you know what, for 3 days, I'm going to go on vacation. I'm just going to sit at home. Don't call me unless the place is on fire.
Yeah.
Type deal. And then when we come back, we'll regroup. We'll see where you failed, which you kind of hope there's somewhere to improve.
Yeah.
If not, then it's
Then why are you
why are you
stressing
even
about it anyways?
why are
Yeah.
you working at all?
Exactly.
Just you have a company running itself.
Yeah, exactly.
There's got to be something going wrong, but I think that is something you should do, at least once a year, just to strengthen your team, know where your weaknesses lie, and where everyone
Well,
can
you
improve.
told me recently you were um, telling me about you had a guy that worked for you that came to you and just kind of told you, "Hey, I'm burnt out."
Hmm.
And that was when I heard that, I'm like, man, that I hate to hear that for anybody. Um, but at least he had the wherewithal to come to you and tell you that he was burnt out and he needed, because some guys won't. They'll just go until the end and they crash and burn and they leave your company and they walk away from a good situation that, most of the time, burnout is temporary. And you
Yeah.
have to try to keep that in mind. There are times that you do get burnt out. I get burnt out too. I have
Hmm.
days that I'm like, man, it's been a week,
Yeah.
To start this year, it's been a year, man. It's been balls to the wall. It has been hot and heavy, and we've been moving fast on a lot of projects. Um, and I've had afternoons, man. I get done, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna work on that this evening, and then I get to the evening, I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
I don't have it in me, and it's probably better that that's going on and happening because I'm not doing something with, like you said, less than 100% in it.
Yeah. And that's a great segue to talk about how you fix burnout, or if you feel like you're starting to get burnt out. Yeah, that particular employee came to me, um, and told me, and I'm glad he did. And I told him, well, I'm glad you did before you just, because we just kind of. He works at a satellite or a remote location, so I don't see him every day. He has his work that he does, uh, and typically, if I tell him, if you don't hear from me, that's just because you're doing a great job and I don't have to, and then if we go a couple of days or I forget to, he'll message me and just say, "What's up? Everything going all right?" And I happened to text him that day, and he openly said he was, burnt out, and he gave me, and I said, "Okay, well, what's making you burned out? Give me, is it too, where are you working too hard at?" Um, there may not be anything we can do. It may just be like, "Hey, man, it's, we are shorthanded at the time." So that's what I told him. I said, by the time we get somebody hired in, it'll be 4 or 5 weeks, but hang in there. It's a busy season. Um, but he was able to give me some things where we can kind of change the pattern up a little bit. Okay, we'll make sure you get this work instead of this work, and um, that's typically why, if you're managing people, if they come burnt out. It's, don't say man up, you'll be fine. You
Hmm.
say, okay, well, let's talk about this. Let's figure this out. And then sometimes, if you're just a listening ear and you tell them, hey, I know it's crazy right now. It's busy. We'll get there. And sometimes that's just the reset they need in your mind, because that's really all you have to do.
Sometimes they need to be able to vent and know that somebody that is at least listening
Yeah.
and knows where they're coming from.
And mental exhaustion isn't, the same as regular exhaustion. I don't have scientific facts to back that up, but you just kind of reset what's
Hmm.
going on. You don't necessarily just need a week off from work, although that can help, especially if you can turn it on, or turn everything off. But reset, changes in pattern, prioritize rest and self care.
I think
Um,
that's probably the biggest one. That doesn't get addressed is recharging,
mhm.
resetting. And today's day and age, like we talked about a few minutes ago, the emails, the texts, the calls, it's so easy for people just to
Social
reach
media, the
out to you.
notifications on your phone.
You clock out at 5 o'clock, but then you're still getting all of this, work coming in, especially, if you were to reach out to your guys and you're constantly on, they go, I have to answer this. I can't just ignore them till
Yeah.
tomorrow. You know, they haven't turned it off yet and it's still on. However long that is, you text them at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. That's got their mind brought back into work, and
Hmm.
they carry that all the way into to bed, and they don't get good sleep because now they're thinking about that. And
Yeah, you get a text on your work phone, and obviously your stress levels spike
Mhm.
immediately. And you're looking at it, you're like, okay, by the time you get on your phone, realize, okay, it's not a big deal. Okay, do this. But you have to start thinking about work. And it takes you a minute to, I mean, you said it, be where you're at, or be where your feet are. Like right now, we're in a podcast. I have everything silenced. I'm not wearing an Apple Watch just because I have to glance down. It may be a dumb email,
Yeah.
but I have to glance down and look at it. And that wouldn't be a very good podcast if I was constantly looking at my phone every time I
Yeah.
stopped talking instead of listening to you. It's the same thing. Uh, Same thing at home. But yeah, sleep, eat healthy, exercise are always good. Like just stay motivated to do that, because if that's part of your routine,
Mhm.
because like I said, it's a slippery slope. You go, you eat, McDonald's or whatever just because you're tired, you don't want to make anything, then you feel like crap because you ate it. Especially if you're trying to eat healthy, then you eat something for dessert. You're not getting up and walking around. You're sitting on your butt watching TV. Uh, it just puts you in a bad mood,
And
and
then that
makes
carries
it
on,
feel
and then
even
you don't
worse. Yeah,
sleep well, and then you get up the next morning, and then it becomes a cycle that it's really hard to get out of.
yeah, and it's easy to blame work. Not that work isn't to blame sometimes, but you go to work tired already.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to magically not be tired when you're just going to get
But
more
from the
tired.
employee standpoint, you can also, because I've been in these situations that so I'm speaking firsthand. Um, then you get a supervisor or somebody that's wanted to, what's wrong with you? Why are you so stressed? Why are you this? Why are you that? I was like, well, you text me over the weekend now, and you disturb my personal time, and you this, and it just carries on, and they don't realize that
Yeah.
one text message or call might have completely thrown
Being
off
open
all
with
of
them
your
too,
stuff.
because at the same time, you're just like, no, I'm not going to say anything. Nobody cares. I need to man up. I need to do whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
then work is slacking
Well,
off a little bit. And then,
unfortunately, sometimes though, you do go to a supervisor and tell them that, and they don't care.
yeah,
They're like,
you're
well, the
right.
pressure's on me.
You can
I'm
only
passing it.
go, yeah.
Shit rolls downhill. I'm passing it on. It's like, well, you shouldn't be managing people if that's your mindset.
Yeah, no, I've had a, talk to somebody in my position at a different location recently. And I don't know how much this will correlate, but it's something I feel like needs to be said. And I work for a large corporation, so he was telling me about there was another manager in our manager training program was working at a different location, and kind of going around, and it might be a location he's going to be a lower level manager at. And he was telling this the guy that was telling me was told by the guy in the manager training program how first time he sat down with a manager at that office, he was I'm trying to work. I'm gonna butcher it, but he basically said like, "Look, I'm the manager here, or I'm the boss here. I don't care. You don't come in here and don't try to run anything. I'm doing." And there wasn't a situation like he was going to come replace him. It's actually going to be the next level lower than him. But basically say, I'm the boss. I run things around here. Don't try to, put your own swing on things. Don't try to do this. Don't try to do that. Asked him how much he was expecting to make. And then he threw in, and then he gave him a number saying, okay, if it's more than this, just forget about it. Don't even think you're not going to make that much money here. And just kind of went on and on. And this particular manager is in his late 20s too. So that's what, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I could expect that from like a manager who's been doing this for 30 years. He's kind of hardened in his ways. That makes sense. I don't agree with it, but it makes sense. And this kid didn't even know what he's doing. But he said that. And the first thing I said is that's bad, a bad manager. And I had met the guy a couple of times, and I'm like, okay, that kind of surprised me that he thought that, but I've never worked with him. It's just I've met him in business functions. And I told him like, I don't think I'm necessarily a great manager. I have strengths that work. I'm not saying I'm a good manager, but I can tell you he is not a good manager.
Yeah.
But just because of that, I tell people, if you have to tell somebody you're the boss, you're not a good boss.
Yeah.
If you're having like, I kind of openly avoid the elephant in the room of saying, hey, I'm in charge here. I'm your manager. I'm your boss. Like that's never something that's ever come out of my mouth, because everybody knows we're all adults. They understand what my role is.
Yeah.
Now, if they are insubordinate or being inappropriate or doing something they shouldn't be doing, arguing with me and say, this is how we're going to do it. Sure. I could step up into that role and be like, hey, push comes to shove. Sure. I've never been put in that position, thankfully. But
someone like
not
that,
really, kind of, but not
someone
really.
like that, that's where it starts with the stresses and the pressures put on you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you carry that and carry that and carry that. And some people think they can thrive in it and thrive while they're grinding and under pressure all the time. And, some people you do okay for a while, long-term years and years and years and decades in a job. You don't tend to do that. And if you think you are, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You're just passing off all the pressure and stress to somebody else, and they're the ones having to deal with it. But that becomes a problem, because then the people that think that way, assume that everyone's going to operate like that.
Yeah.
And then that's where you get the burnout, is all that pressure continuing to fall down on someone that can't handle it, maybe hasn't been trained properly, or, you know, that's really dangerous. And that's why you see a lot of companies fail, and they want to blame employees. Well, how well did you manage them? Were you adding to their workload and their stress, or were you trying to help them succeed?
And I think some mistakes that managers might make is trying to actively manage. And I know there are people, like everybody at my location, I'm pretty much on a level friends with. Like you can't be friends with everyone, and in every situation you can't. Hey, you have to talk about business situations. But and that manager's defense, maybe he had a bad experience with somebody he definitely could not be friends with, because being so young,
Mhm.
you have people. I mean, I have
Well,
people
I think
old enough to be my
my
parents.
opinion on that is that you have to earn that with them.
Yeah.
You have to earn that respect level. And if you do a good enough job at managing them and earning that, you can still kind of be friends, but they know where the line's at.
Yeah. You can have
They
water cooler
understand.
talk. They can, I have an open door policy. I never close my door unless I'm in a meeting. Anybody can come in, sit down, talk to me anytime they want. Uh, and that's fine. But at some point, there is work time and, whatever. Um, but also what he's doing when you tell somebody, hey, I run things around here, you know, forget that that's, an inappropriate thing to say in general. You probably lost all that guy's respect right
Yeah.
away. But you're kind of closing yourself off to, having a different point of view, a different experience.
Mhm.
I tell people I have no problem if you want to tell me, hey, this is my opinion on this situation. That's fine. We can talk about it. I'm not just gonna say, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I know what I'm doing. Especially when I started, I had zero experience in the field I was going in. So I had experienced people that I'm gonna say, okay, what's your opinion? What do you think about this? Tell me the pros and the cons. Because ultimately I have to make that decision. Even if I say, hey, we're going with your decision no matter what, because you're an expert, you know what you're doing. I'm still making that decision, and I'm the one that's going to pay for that decision.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be, an idiot and think I'm the boss. I know what I'm doing. No, I'm the boss around here.
But sometimes the perspective other people have with their life experiences will help in those situations.
Exactly.
Whether they're experienced in the field that you're in, just their life experience in general can be useful for you.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, change the pattern, do something different. Talking to friends or doing hobbies, depending on what it is. The middle of the day, there's only so much you can do. But we've talked on the phone. Call a trusted friend or just somebody you work with, and just say, "Hey, man, I just need to talk about
It's
something."
good to have somebody that's an out for you, that you can kind of vent to, that
Mhm.
they don't have to have answers necessarily. Just let you
Just
get
know
it.
they
Sometimes
say,
just
"Yeah, it
getting it off your
sucks."
chest helps.
When somebody says, "Yeah, you're right, that sucks. I
Yeah.
dealt with something similar," or whatever, it just makes you feel like, one, you're not alone. Two, you're not uh, uh, you're not overreacting to the situation. They're agreeing with you. That
Mhm.
sucks. And sometimes that's kind of okay. Some days you have wins, some days you have losses, and that's kind of how you stack them up. And at the end of the day, that's how you decide if you've had a good day or a bad day. But lots of times it's not about wins or losses, it's just stuff you dealt with,
Yeah.
maybe
Well, I mean,
positive, maybe
and the
negative,
thing
maybe
is,
great.
everyone has burnout at some point, somewhere, somehow. Some are worse than others. You can look at, in the education field with teachers. You don't think they get burnout?
Hmm.
There's a reason they get summers off. You know, they're underpaid for what they have to deal with. They spend a lot of time and money and effort outside of what they're paid to do.
Hmm.
And by the time they get to the end of a school year, they're spent. They've put everything, all the amount of energy they have into, educating kids, and they're spent. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a form of burnout. When you're just tired, you're like, I need a longer weekend. I need a summer break. I need a vacation. Like those are signs that you have some burnout build up.
Hmm. And a big one, and I know everyone, I mean, it's such an obvious one, but I know everyone's going to, oh, if we had a panel out here or an audience, they would tell, okay, here's why this is impossible. Just learning to say no.
Hmm.
And it didn't have to be in a professional sense. It's just,
Yeah.
don't pick up your phone. Don't look, or I heard my work phone over there vibrate. it vibrated 3 times back to back to back. They could just be dumb emails. It could be a text message from a driver from a tech from somebody. And I could just say, hey guys, let's stop recording for a minute. Let me check on that. Just not going to do it because it's probably nothing. It may be something big, but I'll deal with it then.
Yeah.
Me knowing about it 20 minutes earlier is probably not going to be that big a deal.
Yeah.
Unless my phone's just constantly ringing, then it's emergency. That would be different. But just learn to say no. Be where you're at. Finish what you're doing. Just like I said, multitasking is bullshit.
Yeah, definitely not overcommitting, and a lot of people will do that even in the workplace. They'll commit to a lot of stuff because they're trying to prove something. They want to, impress their supervisor.
Trying to grind.
They're grinding, and that's great. I mean, those are great attributes to have, but learn where your limits are at and what level, when you get to a point you're taking on so much and you feel that burnout, and it's okay to go to your supervisor or go to whoever. Hey, you know what? I took this on. I'm just feeling a lot of pressure from it. I want to make sure we succeed. Can we shift this to someone else, or what can we do? I mean, those are real conversations that need to happen. They don't happen enough because people are worried about it. And I'll agree, there are plenty of supervisors that are not good supervisors that shouldn't be managing people, that will just say, well, I've done it. Everyone does it. Everyone's grinding. Everyone's got a lot on their plate. Well, that's not on you. And you have to realize that if a business is running that way, it's not on you.
And you could say, and I know the operations manager I have working for me will tell his guys, because he was in the same position as them, is I would never ask you to do something I haven't done myself, which is good, but it can also be bad in the same way. It's like, come on, man, I've done this before, and sometimes it has to be done. I'm not saying nobody ever has to work overtime and you don't have to do stuff you don't normally do, but I have certain guys that I'll call, when you have to call somebody to add something to their work, and managers know, there are a couple of people you're like, man, I would rather not have to ask them. But it's not fair to always lean on the people that say, oh yeah, I got it, no problem. But I have guys that do that. It's like, whatever. Yeah. It's not a big deal. I get paid by the hour. I do this, but I have to remind them, hey, just tell me if it's, I would rather you tell me that than me just be like, oh, they don't care. And then they just get built up. And then they end up thinking about quitting or this or that because it was too much. And I'm like, well, you didn't tell me. I thought you didn't care. I'm pretty open. If you just want to say, man, that's just, I'm not saying you won't have to do it in the long run or whatever, but you can tell me that you don't want to do it and why you don't want to do it, rather than saying, yeah, boss, I got it. And then hang up and go, that mother, calling me, adding,
Well,
I came in early. I'm working hard. I'm doing all this. And I tell them, I tell everybody when I interview them, if I hire you, you're going to get mad at me some days. I might call you 3 times in a row because these people called out or this or that, for whatever reason, you're going to get mad at me. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. Tell me, but know that if I'm calling you to do it, this is the last resort because I've already worked it in my head. Can we push that to tomorrow? Can I take care of it? Can this person do it?
Yeah.
Just know that I'm not just willy nilly calling you just like, hey, he'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. Let's just get it off my plate. I'm going to go back and, I want to make sure I get home by, get off by 5:00 today. So I'm just going to make sure that gets
keep in mind, when you get into something, typically, there are just jobs. People just get jobs to have a job. But when you get into something, I mean, you had a dream, a passion. There was something that you were chasing in that. For what? Like, you weren't just chasing and going to grind just to grind the rest of your life. There was something you were willing to grind and work hard for. Grinding in the short term is okay. You just have to know the limits, but try to go back to what is that reason? What am I trying to achieve? Where am I trying to be? And make sure that the decisions you're making, the things you're doing are getting you there. It's like athletes, especially young athletes they hit burnout a lot, because they train and it's constant training. It's nonstop. It's nutrition. It's lifting. It's, running. It's all those things that they need.
It's worse for an athlete too. When you just like, screw it, I'm going to stop doing it. And now you got to start over.
Exactly. And it happens all the time though. But there's sometimes it's like, if you're trying to achieve that goal, but you're just not getting there, so you're continually having to grind, sometimes you got to take a step back, refocus, get your mind right again, and figure out, okay, what am I trying to do again? Because sometimes you lose sight of that.
It's like I sent you my notes and I didn't address root causes and reevaluate priorities. Let's figure out that's exactly what you just said. What's causing my burnout? Because if you really think about it, because I even thought about it the other day, like maybe it was 5 phone calls in a row. And I'm like, well, did it really add that much to it? Because you ideally want to go to work, say I got these things to accomplish. I want to sit there quietly and accomplish these things and have nothing happen. And of course, you're thinking when your phone rings, okay, somebody got in a wreck, somebody did this, somebody's calling out. You're thinking the worst things, and those things can, kind of ruin your day. But really, when you look back and you're exhausted, and I try to reflect on my day. I don't know if I have a good day or a bad day
Yeah.
most times because
Yeah.
I don't want to just by default say it was a bad day because I'm tired.
You don't want to set a level or a precedence of this is good and this is bad.
Yeah, exactly. But I just kind of look back and say, you know what, if uh I got through things and accomplished things, it was a good day.
It goes back to a lot of what, I talk about in that book, not to put a plug in for that, but
That's
that
what this
truly
whole
is,
thing is.
it's, defining success. So
Hmm.
defining your day, every day might be different. Today could have been a great day, a successful day, and that's fine. And tomorrow could be a shit show,
Yeah,
but was there still success you could take from it?
yeah.
Don't look at, well, these phone calls of this happened to this.
It was a win
Well,
or
you
a
know what? We
loss
still got to
necessarily.
hear. We still grew and we learned. Even with those mistakes, we learned from those.
Hmm.
Man, guess what? That's not going to happen again.
That's
So
the same
there
thing.
was a
It
win there.
was the same thing. If you look at it, wins and losses, okay, well, why was it a loss? I tell one of my drivers if they got in an accident or got a ticket or failed a DOT inspection or something like that, okay, that seems like a bad day for them, especially if they have, they're fined or have to get written up or
Yeah.
whatever. But uh, you look at, is it a win or a loss? Okay, it was a loss. Well, what did you learn from that? I bet we had one driver in particular who's going through his steps to become a driver trainer, which at a big corporation, it's a long list of things, not to make sure he's qualified for it, but just to certify him for it. It's kind of dumb. And he was involved in a wreck, and it was, hey, they just changed the lines on this new, and I watched the video. I know exactly what he did. I had to tell safety, this is what happened. That's why he did this. And they're like, oh, that made more sense. But it was obvious what he was doing. And at the end of everything, got drug tested, did whatever, and he said, "Well, I guess I'm disqualified from being a trainer." I said, "I don't know. We'll talk about it. We have just more and more meetings with big corporations, but we have a meeting to this is a week later. We have a meeting to decipher what's happening. Is he getting written up? Is he doing this or that?" And I had brought that up. I said, "Hey, he was wondering, is this completely disqualifying from being a trainer?" And the safety manager popped up and said, "No, actually, I think this would help him become a trainer because it wasn't something so
It's
obviously
something to
dumb.
point
He
out. Yeah.
wasn't
It
doing
wasn't
any,
part of the training anyways. So
yeah, he
now it
wasn't
could be
doing anything that was
egregious or,
dangerous.
yeah.
Yeah, it was he did the he wasn't on his phone. He wasn't doing anything like that. It's like he actually has an experience to talk about to pay attention more to do this." And I told him, he was kind of excited about it. He's like, okay, I still get to do. Hey, it was a bad day. It
Hmm.
it sucked, but if you're one to compare and grade yourself and do things like that, just be 1% better than you were the day before. You
Yeah.
made a sign for me and you. I don't have it here at my work office, but just 1% better. Just be 1% better than you were yesterday because every day is not going to be great.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you have to remember you have 365 days in a year,
mhm.
and however many more days in your life. And you get like, why let
That's a
that
hell of a
one,
lot better if you're 1% better.
why let that one day define your week, your month, your year? Why let that one day? Then I get it. You get several days. I know that'll be the question. Well, what if I have a whole week that's bad? Well, sometimes that happens. We've all been there. We've had bad weeks. What the best thing we can do is reset on the weekend
Some,
and go back at it the next week. And like you said, just get a little better this week. Can we just make
yeah.
it a little bit better this week and then a little bit better? And sometimes, it's going to be a mental side. And sometimes it's not just the situation you're in, it's you. Sometimes it's you carrying personal problems or other things you have going. Maybe you have a side hustle that's, taking a lot of your attention from work or this, there's so many things that could be happening in your life. Reevaluate that too. And don't think that the situation you're in is just the bad spot. It
Mm.
could be what you're bringing to that situation as well.
So I had a job one time. Um, I was a driver. I just gotten, well, this is my second or third CDL job, but it was going to be a local job. I was going to be home every day, and it was rough. I was working 14, 16-hour days. It was tough. And we were at one of my wife's family gatherings, and her grandfather is all about hard work, and he's built up a business and sold it. He's done lots of things, and kind of talked to him, and uh, we were talking about the new job, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to tell him I work 14, 60-hour days, and I want him, his response to be, well, that's great. Sometimes that's what you have to do to, you know, that's the struggle
You were wearing it like a badge of honor.
that's what I wanted to happen. And then he just said, man, I told him I work 14, 16-hour days. And his response was, man, that sucks. That's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to like, hey, get a pat on the back. Like, hey, this is what's supposed to, this is what's supposed to be. But that's true. Sometimes it just sucks. You have a rough week. It sucked. Take what you can from it, learn from it. I told you when we were getting back into this, you asked me what made you get back into it. And I think I'm just more comfortable at work. Not that things are easier. Things are easier because we're able to hire enough people and get things, nailed down, but I just understand things better, I guess. And I'm getting less stressed out about the small stuff, and I'm just not caring about the small stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, if you can go through a day or even a week and look back, okay, why did, challenge yourself. Why did it suck so bad? There's got to be something positive you can take from it. If there's not, then it's just like, hey, it's a mental thing. Just scrap it and go. Just keep showing
And that
back
was
up.
also, you were, in that situation, realizing that something like doing the podcast was more stressful. It was adding more things, and you had to be able to say no.
Yeah.
So just saying, hey, no, I'm going to take this out of my life for a little bit until I got to reset. Let me figure this out again.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly sometimes what it
I was
takes.
getting burnt out, and there wasn't a list I could get. I mean, there was probably some stuff I could improve and do differently, but I went into an industry I'd never been in before, in the busiest time of the year when they were shorthanded. I'd never had operational management experience, just some sales management experience. So I go in there where it's completely different. Everything's your problem. Everything's your fault. Everything, it's not like, oh, that sucks. It's like, oh shit, now we gotta fix that, before when I was a salesman, I had customers. It was, just hit the keyboard. Just want to make sure it didn't stop recording. It was, driver has a flat tire. Okay. I'll call my customer. Just make sure we get it there today, or just tell me and I'll tell them. But now it's the driver has a flat tire. It's like, okay, oh crap. Now we got to fix the flat tire. Now I got to, work on making sure he doesn't get too much overtime just because he's sitting there on that flat tire. Now I got to rearrange his route to make sure he can make all of his deliveries, or we know what we're going to do because of that. And then I obviously have an employee sitting there just, yeah, he's getting paid by the hour, but he's like, what the hell's going on? He's waiting, So there's a lot there to do. And it was just burned out. I just couldn't mentally handle it without coming home and just turning everything off, side hustle wise and podcast wise. So it took a little bit to get out of that mental state. And I don't know that was a complete right thing to do, but it's like sometimes you just take a step back. Don't stress yourself out over it. Come up with an exit, wait for a weekend where you're kind of mentally clear, come up with an exit strategy, and like, okay, I'm going to step away for how many ever months. That's how it makes, rather than just stopping and trusting yourself to go back, come up with a plan. I'm going to stop for this amount of time. And then, when the busy season's over, I'm going to come back to doing it and, address your root causes and reevaluate your priorities. Similar things to what we're talking about, being burnt out. And, maybe you realize, hey, you just took on too much. You can't do all this. You can't be an Uber driver and start a podcast and do work on building your own business and still have a 9 to 5. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. And then you got to reevaluate what's important to you. Because if you want to keep your podcast and you still want to Uber and you still, want to build your business, and say, okay, well, maybe I got to change what kind of 9 to 5 I have so I can either be mentally more prepared when I get home to do this stuff, or physically better, or more flexible, whatever, or just look at it. Maybe you don't want to do a podcast. Maybe you don't kill yourself and then you lose everything. Then you're not able to do anything.
I was in a similar situation. I reevaluated, I'm very strong in my faith, but, I'm not always as diligent to be at church. And, luckily we're at a great church, and, the pastors, they don't put pressure on you. They just want to see you there. They love to see you. And there'd be a lot of times it's just like we have so much going on. That was the last thing we were doing on Sunday. You know, it's like, are we going? I'm kind of
If you
tired.
have
I'm beat.
time.
I'm this. I'm that. I got this to do. I got that to
Let's
do.
see what time we wake up on Sunday.
Yeah, and it would become that. So it was very sporadic when we would go, and you know, we have a great pastor. He would text us. You know, my wife and I both. He would text us and say, "Hey, hope to see you guys tomorrow." He'd just be most Saturdays. You know, "Hey, hope to see you guys tomorrow. Haven't seen you in a while." You know, it was almost that motivating that we needed, and we actually, you know, decided in doing things right. We were burnt out. We were tired. We had so much going on that we were really feeling compelled and pushed, and you know, the church asking to serve and to, you know, be part of the greeting team, and we're like, okay, well, if we do that, we have to be here this week, and and we just made that commitment to say, hey, you know what, we're gonna go, and we're gonna miss the least amount we can. You know, and my son's playing college baseball, so we would, you know, he might have games on Sunday or Monday, and you know, we have to travel. We would go to church. We would make sure we would leave right after, head out of town, do whatever we had to do. But we made that the priority, and then other things started to fall in place. You know, we would move something out, and you know, we just reevaluated where we were at and what was important, and we moved the important things to the top, and those are the things that didn't waver.
Yeah.
Then we would fill in with whatever else we wanted involved in life. And you know, the podcast for us, while we do love doing it, it was something that at the time for you and I both, it was just in our lives wasn't important. That was something we were okay with putting to the side for other important things. And then we can roll into and say, okay, well, now we can add that and we can add that. Now that things are working out and settling, and priorities change over time. So just, you have to be able to adjust and move. But I think really making sure that whatever's the biggest priority for you, you move that to the top, and that's where it needs to be.